Hello everyone. I bet you're watching this video to relax your mind and drift off to sleep. So if you enjoy it, don't hesitate to like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, let me know where you're from and what time you're watching. Are you ready? The exciting story begins right here.
Story 1. Glory and Moon, a married couple from Hong Kong, have two sons, Hoying and Henry. Henry was born on June 7, 1983, in Hong Kong. The family lives in an apartment on the outskirts of the city. From a young age, Glory and Moon began investing in real estate by buying and selling apartment units. They pursued this business over the years and eventually built considerable wealth. Glory, as a father, was very strict with his sons and wanted them to become independent. To prepare them for the future, he and Moon made sure they received a good education. Hoying excelled in his studies, but Henry struggled. Despite his parents' efforts to provide him with quality education and piano lessons, Henry showed little interest. He lived in his own world, focused primarily on investments, women, and gaming. Henry was known to be arrogant, often looking down on others, and was generally a quiet and isolated child. By middle school, he had almost no friends. When he began to receive poor grades, his parents were deeply disappointed. In response, Glory sent Henry to study abroad in Australia at the University of Canberra in 2000. However, Henry faced bullying and discrimination from his classmates at university. Unable to cope, he dropped out in 2003 and returned to Hong Kong, lying to his parents that he had completed his degree. His parents soon uncovered the truth and, disappointed once again, enrolled him at the University of Hong Kong. Yet, Henry remained uninterested in his education, spending much of his time in the world of online gaming. He also tried working at various jobs but never stayed for long, often leaving due to boredom or dissatisfaction with his income. Henry's personal life was similarly troubled. He struggled to maintain relationships, and one day, a girlfriend told him she was pregnant. Henry, however, refused to take responsibility and pressured her to have an abortion. When she decided to keep the baby, Henry broke off the relationship. In 2007, Henry met Angus, who would go on to become his best friend. Henry was generous with Angus, frequently treating him to meals and buying him clothes. Their friendship was somewhat unbalanced, with Henry playing a dominant role, which led Angus to hold him in high regard and follow his lead closely. Angus has a very gentle nature. His background is quite different from Henry's. Angus shares a close bond with his mother and older sister, who often worries about him, as he is easily influenced and prone to manipulation. While Angus struggled academically and frequently failed his classes, he had a strong aptitude for mathematics. Throughout his school years, he was often the target of bullying but also received protection from some friends. This shared sense of vulnerability brought Henry and Angus closer, as they both felt a connection in their experiences. Angus's romantic relationships were fraught with difficulties. He married a woman from Indonesia, only to be heartbroken on their wedding night when she confessed that she already had a husband. It turned out she also had another boyfriend and had only married Angus as a way to stay in Hong Kong. Following the failure of his marriage, Angus traveled to New Zealand to reflect and recover. There, he met another woman who ultimately deceived him and drained him financially. Angus returned to Hong Kong penniless and deeply disheartened. Desperate and overwhelmed, Angus attempted to end his life by ingesting mercury from a thermometer mixed with rat poison and cough syrup. Fortunately, his older sister discovered his plan in time, saving his life, though he did suffer some nerve damage from the incident. In 2011, Henry's life also took a downturn. He was repeatedly dismissed from his workplace due to his undisciplined behavior, which gradually distanced him from Angus. To make matters worse, Henry had invested heavily in stocks, only to suffer significant losses when their value plummeted. Unemployed and out of money, Henry asked his parents to sell their apartment and split the proceeds 3 ways, between his parents, his brother, and himself. However, his parents refused his request, insisting that Henry find a job and support himself. Feeling rejected, Henry left home, convinced his parents no longer loved him. His resentment grew, fueled by feelings of abandonment and anger. After leaving, Henry disappeared for a while, with no one certain of his whereabouts. Eventually, he reached out to Angus, his only close friend from the past, despite them not having seen each other in a long time. Their bond remained strong, and Angus welcomed Henry, offering him a place to stay. Confiding in Angus, Henry vented his frustrations about his family. He expressed deep bitterness toward his mother, recalling how she forced him to take piano lessons as a child. He also harbored intense hatred for his father, who he described as an alcoholic who often came home late, sometimes taking out his anger on Henry's mother and older brother. Tensions with his parents had been simmering for years, and the argument over selling their apartment had finally escalated, deepening the rift between Henry and his family. On Tuesday, March 5, 2013, Hoying visited his parents' apartment, intending to meet with them. However, he was surprised to find only his brother, Henry, there. When Hoying asked about their parents, Henry mentioned hearing that they had planned a trip to Sangtong, China, for a vacation. Strangely, Hoying had not been informed of any such plans. Over the next 2 days, Hoying repeatedly tried to reach his parents by phone, but his calls went unanswered, leaving him increasingly worried about their safety. On Thursday, March 7, 2013, at Hoying's urging, he and Henry went to the police to report their parents as missing. At the station, Henry explained that the last time he had seen their parents was on Saturday, March 2, 2013, when they met for tea at Langham Place in Mongkok. After that, he claimed to have had no further contact with them. 5 days later, on Sunday, March 10, 2013, the police informed Hoying and Henry that, according to the Immigration Department, there was no record of their parents leaving Hong Kong. Their names did not appear on any flight schedules, nor was there any recent activity associated with their passports. The disappearance of Glory and Moon remained a mystery, leaving family and friends confused and concerned. During this difficult time, while their parents were officially listed as missing, Hoying launched a public campaign. He created a Facebook page asking the public to share any information about his parents' whereabouts, hoping someone might help unravel the mystery. The next day, Hoying and Henry went to the Apple Daily News Agency to report their parents' disappearance. The story of the missing couple quickly captured public attention across Hong Kong, prompting the police to prioritize the case. That day, the police summoned the brothers for a second round of questioning. While Hoying stated that he had no knowledge of his parents' whereabouts, Henry repeated details about his last meeting with them. During the interrogation, however, Henry began sending messages in an online gaming WhatsApp group, confessing shocking details. To the astonishment of his friends in the group, Henry claimed he had killed his 65-year-old father and 63-year-old mother. He also wrote, "I am a psychopath. I cannot empathize with other people's pain because of experiences from my childhood and adolescence. For some reason, I just didn't want them here." Henry's friends, alarmed by these confessions, immediately reported the messages to the police. Later that evening, Henry was allowed to return to his parents' apartment. But early the next morning, at around 7 a.m., the police arrived and arrested him. That same day, at 10:30 a.m., the police also detained 35-year-old Angus at his home. During questioning at the police station, Henry openly admitted to planning the murders as early as September 2012. He had meticulously listed the tools he would need and noted the gruesome steps he intended to take, including dismembering the bodies and draining the blood. By January, Henry had enlisted Angus's help, arranging for him to visit his apartment. Having prepared a list of required items, Henry began purchasing tools such as butcher knives, hammers, lunchboxes, and bleach. Between January and February, to avoid raising suspicion, Henry occasionally asked Angus to purchase various items, though Angus was unaware of Henry's true intentions. In the days leading up to the murder, however, Henry confided in Angus, discussing his plans to kill his parents. Henry initially intended to carry out the crime near the border of Sanchin City and Hong Kong, but Angus felt the location was too exposed and instead suggested using his own apartment in a remote area. On Friday, March 1, 2013, Henry invited his parents, Glory and Moon, to lunch at Angus's apartment, under the pretense that he had moved there. Unaware of his intentions, Glory and Moon accepted the invitation. CCTV footage later showed Henry leading his parents through the apartment lobby. The three of them waited in the lobby until the elevator arrived, then went up together. Once inside the apartment, Henry and Angus initially created a calm and welcoming atmosphere, inviting Glory and Moon to sit down. But the tension quickly escalated when Henry and Angus launched a sudden attack. Angus covered Moon's mouth from behind and plunged a knife into her neck, killing her. Henry then attempted to stab his father in the back, but his father resisted, and in the struggle, the knife in Angus's hand accidentally wounded Henry's thigh. As Henry began to falter, Angus stepped in to help, fatally stabbing Henry's father in the neck. With both parents now dead, Henry left the apartment, still in his blood-stained clothes, and went to the hospital to receive treatment. After getting 11 stitches for his thigh wound, he visited a local market to buy new trousers and changed out of his bloody clothing. That afternoon, Henry returned to the apartment to help Angus with the grisly task of disposing of their parents' bodies. Under the cover of night, they began dismembering the bodies. They preserved some parts with salt to slow down decomposition, stored others in lunchboxes in the freezer, and even boiled or microwaved some with barbecue sauce, intending to eat these parts as side dishes with rice. Other body parts were mixed with sand and cement, placed in plastic bags, and gradually disposed of at a nearby pier. After hours of interrogation, the police decided to search Angus's apartment for evidence. Upon entry, they found blood-stained carpet remnants that pointed to the crime. It was clear the apartment had been prepared for murder. The police discovered 3 trash bags containing body parts, additional bags filled with sand and cement, a meat-cutting board, 6 styrofoam lunchboxes, a bucket with a saw, and 7 knives. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, police discovered 2 refrigerators containing the heads of Glory and Moon, along with several lunchboxes filled with meat. They also found a microwave with human flesh mixed with cooked barbecue sauce on a plate of rice. Yellow oil, which turned out to be the victim's fat, had pooled around the microwave. In Angus's room, investigators found a note detailing the tools and steps involved in the murder, hidden beneath his mattress. When news of the case broke, it shocked Hong Kong society. Many were stunned that Henry, a young man with a small, shy appearance, could commit such a brutal act against his own parents. Rumors quickly circulated, with some speculating that Henry had engaged in cannibalism. However, the investigation found no evidence that either Henry or Angus had eaten the cooked meat. While Henry and Angus were detained, the police continued to gather evidence. Over a year after the crime, on Monday, August 4, 2014, their trial began. Charged with premeditated murder, Henry and Angus both maintained their innocence in court. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented, the 2 men turned on each other, each blaming the other. Henry claimed it was Angus who had masterminded the plan and written the note outlining the murder. However, handwriting analysis revealed that the note found under Angus's bed was, in fact, written by Henry. Angus also denied involvement in the murder itself but admitted to helping clean up the scene. He claimed he only returned to his apartment on March 4, 2013, 3 days after the murder had taken place. According to Angus, Henry greeted him with a faint smile and showed him his parents' heads in plastic bags. Angus stated that he helped Henry clean up and dispose of the bodies only because Henry had threatened to kill his mother if he didn't comply. The defense then requested a psychiatric evaluation for Henry, arguing that his actions stemmed from mental health issues. The initial assessment indicated that Henry had bipolar disorder and obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. The defense presented these findings, describing Henry as a dropout who was unemployed, unable to maintain relationships, and deeply unhappy. So much so that he had contemplated ending his life. Psychiatrists suggested that his stress and feelings of failure might have contributed to his actions. However, a second psychiatric evaluation found no clinical abnormalities, concluding instead that Henry exhibited narcissistic and psychopathic traits. His IQ test showed an above-average score of 126, while Angus's IQ was found to be below average at 84, consistent with his older sister's description of him as easily influenced and manipulated. The prosecution argued that Henry had carefully planned the murder and manipulated Angus into helping him. Amid public pressure and heightened interest in the case, the trial was postponed several times. Finally, on Friday, March 20, 2015, Henry was convicted of premeditated double murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, plus an additional 9 years and 4 months. This sentence was notably different from Angus's, who received only a 3-year prison sentence, as he was found not guilty of planning the murder but rather of obstructing the burial. After serving his time, Angus was released immediately following the trial. During Henry's trial, additional insights surfaced about his deep-seated resentment toward his parents. Henry blamed them for all his perceived failures in life. He claimed that he struggled to concentrate on his studies because his father frequently played the television at a loud volume. He also harbored intense resentment toward his mother, not only for forcing him to take piano lessons but also for humiliating him in front of a woman he admired. Henry stated, "I thought if I could resolve the emotional relationship with my parents, that would be a solution. If they died, I could be reborn." He admitted he had wanted to complete the act before he turned 30 and felt a sense of relief once his parents were dead. Initially, he had even planned to kill his older brother, but the feeling of inner peace he experienced after his parents' deaths ultimately led him to abandon this idea. In a disturbing revelation, Henry also claimed that if he had managed to avoid capture, he and Angus would have gone to China, where he planned to commit further crimes, including assaults on random women. Fortunately, Henry's crimes were discovered before he could carry out these intentions, preventing further harm. Story 2. Uruguaiana, located in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. This city, with a population of over 120,000, shares a border with Argentina and faces the city of Paso de los Libres, separated only by a river. It was in Uruguaiana that a 29-year-old man named Jonathan Martins del Almeida was born and raised. While little information about Jonathan's childhood is available, it is known that he is the youngest of 7 children and is affectionately called Naco or Naquinho by his family and friends. Jonathan was known as a hardworking and tireless young man, dedicated to helping his family financially. In 2013, Jonathan accompanied his father to Caxias do Sul, approximately 650 kilometers from his hometown, where they both worked as construction laborers on a project. It was during this time that Jonathan met a 51-year-old woman named Lida Natalina Alves Pinheiro. Despite their 22-year age difference, Jonathan was drawn to Lida and admired her. Not long after, they began dating. A few months later, Jonathan and his father's work contract came to an end, necessitating their return to Uruguaiana. Jonathan left Lida in Caxias do Sul, but they maintained their relationship despite the distance. In the midst of their conversations, Jonathan expressed his desire to move back to Caxias do Sul to live with Lida. Ultimately, he kept his promise and relocated to be with her. They lived together for a time before deciding to move again, this time to Arroio do Sal, a small coastal town in southern Brazil with a population of about 10,000. There, Jonathan found a job as an expert in installing home security systems, and he and Lida moved into a house not far from his workplace. Although Jonathan had grown more distant from his family in recent years, he maintained his connections through phone calls, WhatsApp messages, and family group chats, where he often shared jokes and engaged in lighthearted banter. However, in mid-December 2016, Jonathan suddenly stopped responding to messages in the family group. On a Sunday in mid-December, he replied to a WhatsApp message for the last time, and soon after, his family noticed his silence. They realized he hadn't even read their subsequent messages. In the hours that followed, they attempted to reach him, but to no avail. Assuming he was simply busy, they decided to wait until the next day to contact him again. When a full day passed without any communication, Jonathan the family grew increasingly worried. Knowing that Jonathan lived with Lita, they reached out to her to inquire about his whereabouts. Instead of providing a clear answer, Lita claimed she didn't know where Jonathan was. She even mentioned that he had left to be with another woman, adding that he had taken his belongings and departed in a green Chevrolet Celta parked at the edge of their housing estate. Doubtful of Lita's story, one of Jonathan's older brothers decided to visit Lita's house in Arroyo do Sal. While he didn't find Jonathan or any of his belongings, he did notice that the motorcycle Jonathan had purchased just a few months earlier was still at the house. The fact that Jonathan had left without his motorcycle intensified his family's suspicions. Weeks passed without any sign of Jonathan, prompting the family to officially report his disappearance to the police in mid-January 2017. A week after their report, Lita also went to the police station to declare that Jonathan had left her home for another woman without any prior notice. However, Jonathan's family couldn't take Lita's report at face value. They remained convinced that Jonathan had mysteriously disappeared. The following day, Jonathan's family and friends began distributing missing persons posters and sharing information on social media. They searched for him in various locations, including emergency rooms, mental hospitals, and even the morgue, but there was no trace of Jonathan. The police, who launched an investigation into Jonathan's disappearance, also visited Lita's house. Unfortunately, they found no evidence of wrongdoing. Jonathan's belongings were gone, with the exception of his new motorcycle. The police attempted to obtain CCTV footage from the area, but none of Lita's neighbors had installed cameras. As the investigation stalled, Jonathan's disappearance seemed to fade into the background. Meanwhile, Lita moved on with her life and began a relationship with a 47-year-old man named Antonio in January 2018. The two were married just a month later, and Antonio moved in with Lita. A year passed without any new leads in the investigation, leading the police to close the case, leaving Jonathan's family frustrated and without answers. Despite the lack of progress, they continued to spread information about Jonathan's disappearance on social media, holding on to hope that the truth would eventually emerge. Then, 4 years after Jonathan's disappearance, an anonymous caller contacted the local police station in November 2020. The caller claimed that Jonathan had been murdered and that his body was buried under the floor of a construction site where he had once worked. The minimal information provided to the police prompted an immediate visit to Lita's house to investigate the area where Jonathan's body was allegedly buried. Initially, the police suspected that Jonathan might be buried in the backyard, as it was the only area that seemed a plausible hiding spot. However, after excavating the site, they found nothing. For years had passed, and the police were beginning to believe that any evidence might have been lost. To aid in their search, they decided to bring in a bloodhound. Shortly after arriving, the dog indicated a spot on the living room floor. At first, the dog seemed uncertain, but when the officers began to demolish the floor, the dog showed signs that it had discovered something. Without delay, the officers dug beneath the living room floor and unearthed human remains. The condition of the remains made immediate identification impossible, so they were sent to the hospital for DNA testing and autopsy. Lita was arrested at the scene, and her husband, Antonio, was also taken into custody by the police. When the remains were found under Lita's house, the police were convinced they belonged to Jonathan, who had vanished 4 years prior. However, only DNA testing could confirm this. Jonathan's family in Uruguayana was notified and rushed to the city. Meanwhile, the autopsy results were released. The forensic doctor noted multiple fractures in the skull, suggesting Jonathan had suffered significant trauma from several blows. The separation of the bones indicated that the body had likely been dismembered, potentially to fit into a burial pit. Ultimately, the DNA test confirmed the heartbreaking truth. The remains were indeed those of Jonathan, who had disappeared 4 years earlier. Lita, when questioned, refused to speak without a lawyer and subsequently hired one to communicate with the police. According to Lita's account, on the night of the incident, Jonathan returned home very drunk after spending the entire night at the bar with friends. During the confrontation, he allegedly broke a glass on the kitchen table and approached Lita. In fear, Lita claimed she picked up another glass and struck Jonathan on the head, asserting that her actions were in self-defense. However, when she discovered Jonathan was dead, panic set in, leading her to hide his body and bury it in an empty lot beside her house. However, Lida's testimony was met with skepticism. How could she have felt threatened by Jonathan when he had not attacked her? Additionally, the fracture in Jonathan's skull suggested that the object used to strike him was not merely a glass. The police also uncovered other evidence that contradicted Lida's statements, highlighting inconsistencies in her story. They continued to urge her to confess, emphasizing that lying would only worsen her situation. Eventually, Lida admitted to her actions and provided a second version of her story. On the afternoon of December 18, 2016, Lida and Jonathan had a heated argument because Jonathan wanted to end their relationship and start anew. Unwilling to accept the breakup, Lida accused him of infidelity. Although there was no evidence to support her claims, Jonathan, tired of the confrontation, sat down to drink a beer. In a fit of emotion, Lida struck him with a beer bottle, causing serious injury and leaving him helpless. In a panic, she dug a hole in the dirt next to her house and dragged Jonathan's still-breathing body into it. In an effort to fit him into the shallow grave, she mutilated parts of his body with a saw. To cover her tracks, Lida disposed of all of Jonathan's personal belongings and fabricated a story for his family, who were searching for him. 2 weeks later, she called a construction worker to build a living room over Jonathan's burial site. The construction worker installed walls and tiles, effectively concealing the fact that Jonathan was buried beneath them. However, it is likely that he sensed something was amiss about the house. This has led to speculation that the anonymous caller who reported the presence of a body in Lida's home was, in fact, the construction worker himself. 2 years after her arrest, Lida, now 61 years old, faced trial on Thursday, January 19, 2023. Her defense team argued that Lida did not intend to kill Jonathan and claimed that the beating was an unfortunate accident. They asserted that she was unaware of the severity of her actions. In contrast, the prosecution maintained that Lida was guilty of murdering Jonathan, suggesting that her intentions became clear after he ended their relationship. The following day, January 20, 2023, Lida returned to court for the trial's conclusion and to hear the verdict. She was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 18 years in prison, along with an additional 10 months for concealing a body, with no chance of parole. Her husband, Antonio, was also tried that day, accused of being complicit in the murder and of hiding the victim's body. However, Antonio denied the allegations, stating that he had only met Lida a year after the murder occurred. With no evidence linking him to the crime, he was acquitted. The case surrounding Jonathan's death garnered significant public attention, highlighting how Lida, with her cunning and cruelty, committed the murder and constructed a living room over her victim's grave. Story 3. Marlene Mae McKinnon Warren was born on April 15, 1950, in Mount Clemens, Macomb County, Michigan, United States. She was the second of 3 children born to Bill Twing and Shirley Twing. Marlene enjoyed a happy childhood, spending part of her youth on her grandfather's farm in a town north of Detroit. Her family and friends described her as friendly, open-hearted, and always willing to help others. Marlene had a talent for painting and developed a particular fondness for clown characters. At the age of 14, she completed a painting featuring clowns, reflecting her love for them. She married her high school sweetheart at a young age and gave birth to her first child when she was just 15 years old. From this marriage, she had 2 sons, John and Joseph. Tragically, Marlene's first marriage ended prematurely when her husband died in a car accident in Texas, leaving her a young widow at 20. She faced the challenge of raising her 2 toddlers on her own. 2 years later, Marlene married Michael Warren. At the time, Marlene was 22, and Michael was 19, becoming a stepfather to John and Joseph. Marlene was known for her hard work and determination. She became a successful businesswoman in her area, owning 20 rental properties leased to large companies, and also worked as a cargo ship inspector. Marlene and Michael lived in a magnificent house on a spacious plot of land, a testament to Marlene's hard work. Their home was located in West Palm Beach, Florida. While Michael worked as a used car sales agent, running a company called Bargain, his success paled in comparison to Marlene's income. During this time, Marlene enjoyed a life of abundance. She had a loving family, financial security, and a comfortable lifestyle. She even purchased a private plane, which she parked in the expansive area of their property. However, Marlene's life took a turn when Michael was arrested in 1986 for a used car scam. He had been rolling back the odometers on the cars he sold to make them appear to have lower mileage. When customers discovered the deception, one of them returned the car and reported Michael to the police. Fortunately, he received only an 18-month probation sentence. Tragedy struck again in Marlene's life when her first child, John, died in a car accident in 1988 at the age of 22, mirroring the fate of his father. At that point, Marlene was left with only one child, Joseph. In early 1989, between January and February, Michael focused on expanding his business. He opened new Bargain branches and hired numerous employees, including mechanics, marketing teams, office staff, and vehicle printers who were behind on payments. One of the new hires was an old friend named Richard Keene. During his time at the office, Richard occasionally brought his wife, Sheila, along with him. At 26 years old, Sheila was 12 years younger than Michael and had recently started working in his office. She quickly proved to be a valuable asset, capable of handling significant responsibilities and tasks. However, Sheila was not solely focused on her work. She also sought to get closer to Michael, viewing him as a responsible, mature, and wealthy man. It turned out that Michael shared similar feelings for Sheila, who contrasted sharply with his wife, Marlene. Sheila was young, slender, and more conventionally attractive than Marlene, who was nearing 40 and had gained some weight. Their mutual attraction blossomed into an affair at work. The office staff were aware of the relationship, yet no one confronted them or informed Marlene. Richard, Sheila's husband, eventually learned about the affair between his wife and his friend Michael. Faced with the situation, Richard chose to divorce Sheila and leave his job. By January 1990, despite Marlene's luxurious lifestyle and the appearance of a happy family, it became known that she and Michael had been experiencing constant fights in the months leading up to her death. The quarrels between Michael and Marlene were primarily fueled by Michael's insecurity. He felt inadequate as a businessman, especially since he earned less than his wife. Although Marlene was not overly concerned about her husband's income, she had grown suspicious of his fidelity. In fact, she had been aware of Michael's affair with an employee for quite some time. Initially, Marlene chose to remain patient, hoping that he would change and wanting to maintain their family for the sake of their child. However, as time went on without any signs of improvement, she finally confronted him about the affair. Their large home became a constant battleground, filled with arguments that left Michael feeling increasingly uncomfortable. He began spending more time away from home, seeking activities outside to escape the tension. Marlene confided in her parents about the issues in her marriage, expressing a chilling sentiment. "If anything happens to me, Michael Warren is the one responsible." This comment hinted at her growing sense of foreboding regarding her safety. Marlene's parents attempted to mediate the situation, but their efforts were unsuccessful. She also discussed her concerns with several colleagues, asking a peculiar question. If a wealthy woman is killed by her husband, who inherits her wealth? Her friends found the question odd, but, unaware of the turmoil in Marlene and Michael's relationship, dismissed it as mere conversation, assuming that all was well between the couple. In May 1990, on a bright morning at their spacious home in the elite area of Wellington, Florida, Joseph, Marlene's 21-year-old son, was having breakfast with 3 friends. Michael, his father, had been out since the morning. At around 11 a.m., there was a knock at the front door. Since Joseph and his friends were still at the table, Marlene, still in her pink pajamas, went to answer the door. To her surprise, she found a clown standing there, complete with orange hair, a red nose, and white face paint. The clown presented her with 2 foil balloons and a basket of flowers. Joseph and his friends, watching from the dining area, commented on the clown's cheerful demeanor. Suddenly, There was a loud bang that Joseph and his friends initially thought was a balloon popping. But when they turned to see Marlene lying on the floor, bleeding profusely from her face, they quickly realized the horrifying truth. The clown had shot her. In a panic, Joseph's friends rushed to help Marlene and called 911 for emergency assistance. Meanwhile, Joseph caught sight of the clown, who calmly turned and walked towards a white Chrysler LeBaron convertible parked nearby, which had no license plates. Without thinking, Joseph and one of his friends jumped into their car to chase after the clown. But their efforts were futile as the clown sped away, disappearing from sight. The medical team that arrived on the scene quickly worked to save Marlene and transported her to the hospital. Meanwhile, Joseph called Michael, who rushed to the hospital to see his wife's condition. Tragically, 2 days later, Marlene succumbed to her injuries and was pronounced dead at the age of 40 due to a close-range gunshot wound to her face. An immediate investigation was launched, including a thorough examination of the crime scene to uncover any new evidence that might reveal the identity of the killer clown. Shortly after the news broke about Marlene's shooting, the police received a mysterious phone call from a woman who cryptically suggested, "If you want to know who the real perpetrator is, just ask Michael Warren and Sheila directly," before abruptly hanging up. This led the police to focus their attention on Michael Warren, especially given the rumors of his affair with Sheila. Although Michael denied the allegations, further investigation revealed that he had left the house and was several miles away at the time of the shooting, heading toward a racehorse location. This alibi was corroborated by friends who had seen him en route. Consequently, the police turned their focus to local shops that sold balloons, flowers, and costumes, suspecting that the killer might have visited one of these establishments to purchase the items used in the crime. At that time, the police visited a shop that sold balloons and flowers to inquire whether anyone had purchased items identical to those found at Marlene's house. The employee on duty reported that a customer who matched Sheila Keene's description, a 20-year-old woman with brown eyes and shiny brown hair, had bought balloons and flowers shortly before the shooting. The police then turned their attention to local costume shops. One shop owner revealed that, around 8 a.m., approximately 3 hours before the shooting, a woman had purchased a clown costume complete with a red nose and orange hair. Once again, this description aligned with that of Sheila Keene. Based on the statements from the shop employees, the police began to suspect Sheila as a potential perpetrator. However, due to the lack of strong evidence, they continued their investigation. For days after Marlene was shot, the police received a report about a white car without a license plate that had been abandoned for 4 days. Joseph recognized the car as matching the one used by the clown on the day of the incident. Upon investigating the vehicle, officers discovered orange threads believed to be from the clown wig, as well as several strands of human hair on the car seat. This is where the police's suspicions regarding Sheila deepened, leading them to issue a search warrant for her apartment. During the search, investigators discovered thread fibers on one of Sheila's dirty clothes that matched those of the clown's wig. Unfortunately, the police were unable to locate the gun that Sheila allegedly used to kill Marlene, leaving them with insufficient evidence to bring charges against her. At that time, DNA and forensic testing were not as advanced as they are today, allowing Sheila Keene to remain free of any charges and continue living her life. In 2002, 12 years after the shooting, Sheila married Michael Warren, and they moved to a luxurious home in Virginia. She changed her name to Debbie and opened a burger business called The Purple Cow in 2014. Meanwhile, the case surrounding Marlene's death, which had gone cold since 1990, was reopened due to advancements in DNA testing technology and forensic science. The police promptly conducted DNA analysis on the strands of hair found in the abandoned car, as well as on the orange thread fibers discovered in both the car and Sheila's dirty clothes. After thorough testing and investigation, the police confirmed in 2014 that Sheila was the suspect they had been pursuing all along. Although they had been aware that the perpetrator had been right under their noses, the lack of strong evidence had previously restricted their actions. Finally, in 2017, at the age of 54, Sheila was arrested at the luxurious home she shared with Michael Warren. She was extradited from Virginia to Florida for further questioning. At that time, it was revealed that she had disguised herself as a clown, presenting 2 foil balloons and a basket of flowers before shooting Marlene in the face. After the crime, she fled and abandoned the car she had used at a nearby shop. In 2020, a press conference was scheduled to address the case, but due to the pandemic, it was postponed, and the first conference finally took place on March 30th, 2021. During the proceedings, the defense team repeatedly denied that their client was responsible for the crime. They argued that witnesses at Marlene's house, specifically Joseph and his friends, described the clown as a tall man. They contended that the hair found could have come from elsewhere and pointed out that the evidence was over 3 decades old. The defense also suggested that a male perpetrator was more likely, thus insinuating that the killer was a man, not a woman. However, DNA analysis of the hair found in the abandoned car and the orange threads from the clown's wig provided more conclusive evidence. Additionally, statements from witnesses, including employees from the flower and balloon shops and costume stores, which had been documented in police records since 1990, reinforced suspicions that Sheila was responsible. During the initial investigation, Sheila had evaded suspicion due to the limitations of DNA testing and forensic science at the time, allowing her to go free. Furthermore, the fact that Sheila married Michael shortly after Marlene's death only intensified suspicions that her presence had motivated her to kill Michael's wife. Although they denied ever having an affair, Michael Warren has never been prosecuted for his wife's death. He has not been proven to be involved in the plot to kill her and is thought to have been unaware of Sheila's actions. However, there was a witness named John Jr., who claimed to be the son of one of Michael's employees, John Sr. John Sr. was a former subordinate at Bargain, tasked with resetting the odometers of the used cars that Michael sold, which led to Michael's police report in 1986. In his final moments, John Sr. confessed to his son that he knew the location of the gun and clown costume used by the killer, buried at one of Michael's used car lots. He alleged that Michael had instructed him to bury the evidence. Just weeks before the shooting, Michael had made a joke to John Sr., saying, "Can you make my wife disappear like you made the car disappear from its owner?" At the time, John Sr. thought it was merely a joke, but he later realized it reflected a grim reality. Following Marlene's murder, John Sr. claimed that Michael ordered him to bury the gun and clown costume. He had also frequently overheard Michael arguing with Marlene on the phone, during which Michael made threats against her life and expressed his deep-seated hatred for her. John Jr. eventually revealed everything his late father had said to the police. However, the question remains, was Michael truly involved? No one knows for certain. Initially, Sheila faced prosecution with the threat of the death penalty. After a postponed settlement, another hearing took place on March 21, 2022, where the prosecutor decided against pursuing the death penalty for Sheila, instead opting for a charge of life imprisonment. The legal battle over Marlene's death continues, with no final verdict yet from the judge regarding Sheila. We can only hope that justice is served, and that the perpetrator receives appropriate punishment for their crime, providing some semblance of closure for the victim's family. Story 4. One of Bollywood's famous actresses, Sri Devi Kapoor, who was also a film producer whose achievements were recognized as Bollywood's first female star, died suddenly in 2018 due to drowning in a bathtub at a luxury hotel in Dubai. Her death invited many questions from various levels of society. Was her death purely accidental, or whether there is a fraudulent act being covered up? Today we will discuss the strange case of Sri Devi Kapoor's death and its latest investigation. The legendary actress, whose full name is Sri Amma Yangar Ayyappan, known professionally as Sri Devi, was born on August 19, 1963 in Meeanampati, Madras State, India, to parents who worked as lawyers. Her mother taught Sri Devi to speak Tamil until she was fluent. Sri Devi discovered her hidden talent in acting when she was only 4 years old, where she played in a Tamil language film entitled Kannun Karanai, which was released in 1967. Since then, Sri Devi has always had roles in various films every year, until she received various awards as the Best Actress in India. Apart from speaking Tamil, she is also fluent in Telugu, Hindi, Malayalam, and Canadian. The dances she performed in each film scene also amazed the producers and the Indian public. so that she always received big role offers and became recognized as the first female actress and first female star in Bollywood from 1985 to 1993. Sri Devi became the highest paid actress in India in a row from 1985 to 1993. This made her sought after by famous Hollywood directors and producers, including Steven Spielberg, to star in famous Hollywood films such as Jurassic Park in 1993. But after various considerations, Sri Devi finally rejected the offer. Like other actresses, Sri Devi has also been hit by unpleasant rumors due to rumors of snatch someone's husband in the household of actor Mithun Chakraborty and actress Yogita Bali. She was suspected of having an affair from 1986 to 1987 with Mithun, but the rumors soon died down when Mithun did not divorce his wife and still maintains their relationship till now. Behind her beautiful face and stunning acting roles, Sri Devi was once called an arrogant actress, but she clarified that her silence was misinterpreted. Actually, she is a shy girl, even though her name is famous everywhere because she started acting at 4 years old. So she never received formal education and experienced free interaction with her school friends, which formed her as an introverted person. As a result, she was always accompanied by her mother when she was on set. Even when Sri Devi was an adult, her mother always accompanied her. In 1995, when Sri Devi was 32 years old, she met a famous producer from the Kapoor family named Boney Kapoor. But this introduction again drew harsh criticism when Boney divorced his first wife, Mona Shori, whom he had been married to since 1983 and had given birth to 2 children. Shortly after his divorce in 1996, Boney married Sri Devi, which made Sri Devi known as a woman who destroyed other people's homes. From that marriage, Sri Devi and Boney were blessed with 2 daughters. The first was Janhavi Kapoor, born in 1997, and Kushi Kapoor, born in 2000. Both of them are now famous actresses in India, following in their parents' footsteps. Unfortunately, Sri Devi also felt extraordinary sadness. After giving birth to her first child while filming a film, her mother, who had always accompanied her during every filming, had to experience serious complications in 1997 due to brain tumor surgery which she underwent in 1995. After investigation, a neurosurgeon discovered that there had been a procedural error. Surgery by performing surgery on the wrong part of her mother's head. This causes damage to vital tissues and nerve centers related to vision and memory. Only a few weeks after complications, her mother died, leaving Sri Devi with deep sorrow so much, so that she decided to take a hiatus from the world of entertainment for 15 years. In 2012, Sri Devi returned to the world and made her name by appearing in several films. Sri Devi's return to the world of film made the film she played in a huge success. This made Sri Devi's name the single most successful comeback actress in Bollywood history after a long hiatus. In 2013, she also received many awards for her films and roles after her comeback. In 2017, Sri Devi signed a contract with the production house to play a film entitled Kalank, which was planned to be released in 2018. But during the filming process, Sri Devi was found to have died suddenly in Dubai. So the filming process had to be restarted from the start and role was replaced by Madhuri Dixit, and the film's release was postponed to 2019. Actually, what happened to Sri Devi? How did she die? And what irregularities were discovered during the investigation into his death? On that day, Sri Devi's husband, Boney, and her youngest daughter, Kushi, traveled all the way to the United Arab Emirates to attend the wedding of their nephew, Indian actor Mohit Marwah, which was held at the luxury Waldorf Astoria Hotel in Ras Al Khaimah city, 6th largest city in Arabia. Unfortunately, their eldest daughter, Janhavi, couldn't go there to accompany her mother because she had to finish shooting. Janhavi sends a shopping list to her mother as a birthday gift. In early March, after the wedding party finished on February 21, 2018, Sri Devi, accompanied by her husband and youngest daughter, went shopping and traveled around the country for a full day. They planned to return to India the next day, on February 22, 2018, to head to Lucknow City, Uttar Pradesh state. But when she was leaving by plane, Sri Devi realized that she had left her cell phone in the Waldorf Astoria hotel room. She returned to the hotel and let her husband and daughter go first to India. She said that she would follow to Lucknow City, But actually, Sri Devi planned to stay in that country for the next few days so that she could take advantage of her relaxing time from her filming activities. Sri Devi also called Boney to express how much she missed him. Boney suggested that Sri Devi continue her journey to Dubai so she could enjoy her holiday in the United Arab Emirates. Sri Devi agreed and booked a room at the Jumeirah Emirates Tower Hotel for several nights starting on February 22, 2018. Apparently, Boney advised Sri Devi to go to Dubai because he had planned to surprise her by secretly visiting his wife in Dubai on February 24, 2018. Boney called Sri Devi again to make up a story so that his wife would stay at the hotel and not return to India. In the afternoon, Boney took a flight from Lucknow to Dubai and explained to Sri Devi that he was attending an important meeting, so he would turn off his cell phone in the next few hours after arriving in Dubai. He arrived at the Jumeirah Emirates Tower Hotel, where Sri Devi was staying at around 18:30 p.m. He also checked in secretly and asked the hotel receptionist for a duplicate access card to his wife's room. When Boney entered room 2201, Sri Devi couldn't contain her excitement, so Sri Devi, who was supposed to be shopping again that night, decided to postpone her shopping because Boney invited Sri Devi to enjoy a romantic dinner at a luxury restaurant. Boney is sure that his surprise on his wife was successful. Sri Devi, who was very happy, immediately went to the bathroom to shower and prepare, while Boney sat in the living room of their room and watched TV while waiting for his wife. But after half an hour had passed, around 7 p.m., Boney didn't see his wife leaving the bathroom and he knew that dinner would be late. Boney knocked on the bathroom door, but there was no answer, so he went inside. Apparently, the bathroom was not locked, but that's where he saw Sri Devi's body immersed from head to toe in the bathtub. Boney immediately called the hotel staff and called the Dubai City Police. From the results of the interim investigation, Dubai police confirmed that there were no drops of water coming out of the bathtub, so it is believed there were no signs of movement or resistance. Officially, Sri Devi was declared dead on February 24, 2018 at 18:30 p.m. due to accidental drowning. Sri Devi's sudden death shocked India and her fans internationally. After the autopsy process was carried out, Sri Devi's body was taken back to India for religious ceremonies and cremation. Hundreds of thousands of Sri Devi fans from various places filled the funeral and took her body to the crematorium. The whole country is mourning the loss of a talented, legendary actress. Even her fellow actresses in the film Kalank also felt the loss, especially since the filming process had not yet been completed. So the director and producer had to rack their brains and immediately reshoot and then contract another artist to replace Sri Devi. On May 3, 2018, Boney and her two daughters traveled to Tamil Nadu with Abu Sri Devi to be released at Rameswaram Beach. An atmosphere of emotion surrounded the release of the ashes. On March 11, 2018, Sri Devi's family held a private prayer ceremony and gave an opportunity to Bollywood actors and actresses to pay their last respects to Sri Devi. After the series of ceremonies had finished, the discussion about Sri Devi's death had not yet ended. Many parties have clearly voiced an investigation into the death of their idol, because the world does not believe that Sri Devi died due to accidental drowning in the bathroom. One by one, the irregularities in Sri Devi's death began to be revealed and became a heated discussion among the public. In fact, the initial suspicion that Sri Devi died was not due to drowning, because apart from the fact that Boney's story did not make sense, the authenticity of the documents released stating that Sri Devi died was also questioned. The document wrote the cause of death as accidental drowning instead of accidental drowning, a spelling error in English that caused further public distrust. In this case, the public is increasingly cornering the grieving Boney as the murderer. But the extended Kapoor family came forward to defend Boney. Boney's younger brother, an actor named Sanjay Kapoor, defended his brother. He said that Sri Devi died of a heart attack before she drowned in the bathtub. But his statement sparked a long debate because it was known that Sri Devi had no history of heart disease and looked very healthy. The results of the toxicology examination, which had been kept hidden, also stated that alcohol content was found in Sri Devi's blood and water in her lungs. This proves that Sri Devi was still trying to breathe when she was in the water. From here, the public believes that there are many things that the big Kapoor family is trying to hide. When people questioned Sri Devi's death, surprisingly, Sunil Singh, an artistic director, film writer and music director who had worked in the Bollywood industry since 1982, revealed that Sri Devi's death was the result of murder. In fact, in his statement, he has also made research and accused clearly that Boney Kapoor, her own husband, had killed Sri Devi. Sunil said that in recent years, Boney had experienced a significant financial decline. Moreover, the new films produced by Boney could no longer explode at the box office. The first film produced by Boney was a big success in 2005 when he appointed Salman Khan to play in his film entitled No Entry, and his last successful film produced was in 2009 entitled Wanted, which still starred Salman Khan. But since 2010, Boney and Salman's relationship has been fractured because Boney's son, an actor named Arjun Kapoor, from a previous marriage, was dating Salman's sister-in-law, Arpita Khan, from 2003 to 2005, and still continues to pursue Arpita after they separated. Arjun even approached Salman's other sister-in-law, Malaika Aurora, until Malaika divorced her husband. This creates tension between Salman and Boney, so Salman tells Boney to stay away from his family. As a result of this strained relationship, Boney's films did not sell well, and Boney is known to have sold one of his properties to fulfill all the needs of his glamorous life. He also fought to maintain the social status of the Kapoor family in the film industry, until speculation emerged that Boney planned Sri Devi's death to seize all her assets. Sunil also finally submitted his research to the court to ask the police to carry out an investigation. Even Sunil's lawyer also revealed something more surprising, that they had found files on Sri Devi's life insurance policy in Oman worth $35 million, which could only be claimed if Sri Devi died in Dubai. This made international headlines at the time, further shining a spotlight on the Kapoor family. But, unfortunately, the court rejected Sunil Singh's application because it considered that the United Arab Emirates police no longer found any suspicion about Sri Devi's death. Amid these suspicions, an assistant commissioner of New Delhi police named Vedbhushan also expressed his own theory. He believed that Sri Devi showed signs of death due to premeditated murder. He also claimed that United Arab Emirates police officials mistakenly determined that Sri Devi's cause of death was drowning. He also speculated that it was possible that Dawood Ibrahim Kaskar, a leader of India's largest cartel who organized an international crime syndicate, was involved in the case. Vedbhushan even went directly to Dubai and stayed for several days at the hotel where Sri Devi was staying to unravel the mystery of her death. As time went by, people began to believe in the theories that were revealed. Even netizens are also paying attention to the last photo uploaded by Sri Devi on her Instagram account on February 22, 2018, which shows that she still looks healthy and happy at her nephew's wedding. But, after the photo was uploaded, Sri Devi was no longer seen leaving the hotel room or around Dubai City. The hotel staff also said that Sri Devi had never left the room since she first checked in, while the wedding guests admitted that the last time they saw Sri Devi was at the party. However, there are also those who defend Boney Kapoor by saying that Sri Devi's death may have been caused by a drug overdose, so Boney discovered it, created a story and made it look like she died by drowning. This was probably done so that Sri Devi was not thought to have died of an overdose and was not remembered as a drug addict. On August 13, 2019, the renowned Madame Tussauds Wax Museum Singapore announced that they would be creating a wax statue of Sri Devi to honor her achievements in Bollywood. When the inauguration of Sri Devi's wax statue was held, Boney Kapoor and her two daughters, Janvi and Kushi, attended the event and posed for photos with their mother's wax statue. 2 years after his name continued to be cornered as Sri Devi Kapoor's killer, Boney Kapoor finally opened his voice and revealed that he had been silent all this time because he was still grieving. Boney also admitted that he was innocent. He explained that after finding his wife dead in the bathtub, he was taken by Dubai police and interrogated for 18 hours straight. In fact, he was questioned again for 48 hours, but Dubai police did not find anything wrong with him, so he was released to attend to his wife's cremation ceremony. Boney also claimed that he had taken a polygraph test that showed he was not lying. He emphasized that he could not have killed his own wife because he had never had problems at home. Although many people believed Boney's words, many more thought that Boney was acting. Various methods have been used by those who believe that Sri Devi was murdered to reopen the investigation. But all their efforts were in vain as the court still viewed the legendary actress' death as an accident. On November 12, 2023, a well-known entrepreneur and activist from India named Deepti Panaiti suddenly revealed the results of her investigation, which had been carried out with her team from various related professions. She had ample evidence to show that Sridevi was indeed murdered, as per Sunil Singh and Ved Bhushan's statements several years earlier. Deepti stated that Boney Kapoor was involved in the murder and involved many other individuals who had the potential to be Sridevi's killer. Deepti said that there was some autopsy evidence that was deliberately hidden by several parties to remain secret. One of the surprising results of the autopsy was the presence of large needle injection marks on Sridevi's body, which appeared to have been around for a long time because they were almost closed. Apart from that, it turns out that Sridevi did not die on February 24, 2018, as reported by the media and documents released, but on February 23, 2018 at 18:30 Dubai time. The autopsy results also showed that mamushi poison was found in Sridevi's blood, a poison from the most dangerous species of mamushi snake found in Japan. Sridevi had been injected with the poison 130 hours or 5 days before her death while still in India. The killer injected the poison along with milk solids to delay the reaction of the poison in the body, damaging several organs and nerves in Sridevi's body. The killer hoped that Sridevi would die in the wedding party while dancing at the event so that no one could find out the real cause of death. But it seems that the poison was too slow to react, so Sridevi remained healthy during the wedding party. Therefore, the killers took Sridevi away from the party location in Ras Al Khaimah city to Dubai city, which is 100 kilometers away, to stay at the Jumeirah Emirates Tower Hotel. According to Deepti, Sridevi's reason for vacationing alone in Dubai doesn't make sense, considering the busy shooting schedule for the film, Kalink, and the presence of her family who are still in Ras Al Khaimah city, while her husband and daughter have returned to India. In fact, based on the testimony of staff hotel, Sridevi never left the room since checking in at room 2201. Deepti suspects that Sridevi was murdered by drowning in a tub of water while in her hotel room. Deepti also alleged that Boney Kapoor pretended to travel from India to Dubai to surprise Sridevi, even though he wanted to make sure Sridevi was really dead. Through collaboration with various parties, Boney succeeded in changing Sridevi's death date from February 23rd to February 24th. What do you think? Do you believe that Sridevi, a famous legendary actress in India, died because of her husband's actions? Which theory do you believe? I hope that with Deepti's efforts to voice injustice again, the authorities in India can be heard, and the real perpetrators can be punished for their actions.